3 years, 3 missed birthdays, 3 long days of sitting by the window pretending I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. But I was. I always was. There's a kind of stillness that creeps in when you realize the people you once taught to count the days until their special one no longer even remember yours. I didn't need presents. I didn't even need a visit. Just a voice, their voice to say, "Happy birthday, Mom." That's all. 1 line, 10 seconds. But silence. Silence speaks longer than any conversation. The first year hurt the worst. I told myself they were busy work kids' life. I even made excuses for them out loud to no one but myself, brushing imaginary dust from the curtains while whispering, "They'll call tonight, I'm sure." I sat in my favorite chair, the one with the frayed armrest from where I used to rock them to sleep, and stared at the phone like it might grow legs and walk over with an apology. I made myself a cup of tea, jasmine. It was what they used to bring me when they were little, their tiny hands cradling warm mugs, faces beaming like they had invented kindness. I took one sip and set it down. It didn't taste like anything, just water and ache. The second year, I reminded them ahead of time. I sent a little text 2 days before, not about my birthday, no, just a light motherly, "This week's flying by." Can't believe it's already June, something gentle, something that gave them space to remember. But the day came and went, again. And the next morning my phone buzzed with a rushed apology, 1 line full of guilt, and too many exclamation marks. "MG, Mom, I'm so sorry." Totally forgot. Forgot. That word stuck in my chest like a cold coin I couldn't cough up. How do you forget the woman who counted your kicks before you were even born, who stayed up all night sewing your Halloween costume even though she had to work the next morning? Who learned how to braid hair from a library book just so you'd feel pretty at school? I didn't answer that message. I didn't know how. What could I say that wouldn't make me sound bitter or needy or old? This year, the third, I said nothing at all. No hints, no cheerful nudges, no waiting in the chair by the window. But the silence still came just as loud. There was no accidental text, no emoji-laden comment on Facebook, not even a belated, "Oh no, was it yesterday?" Just nothing, like I had slipped through a crack in their calendar unnoticed. So I sat with it, the nothingness. I let it wash over me like rain through an open window. I didn't cry this time. I didn't make tea. I just sat still and let myself feel it. The absence, the forgetting, the ghost of a woman who once made birthday magic out of pennies and patience. And in that silence, I heard something else. Not their voices, no, but mine. A voice I hadn't listened to in years. Quiet, tired, but still there. It said, "You mattered. You still matter, even if no one remembers." So I whispered it back, just once, just for me. There was a time when birthdays were sacred in our house. Not fancy, we didn't have the money for that, but full of heart. Full of flour-dusted countertops and balloon strings tied to kitchen chairs. I used to wake up at dawn to bake their cakes from scratch. No box mixes. I'd learned early that love didn't come in prepackaged shortcuts. It came in burnt fingers from pulling the cake out too soon and whipping cream by hand when the mixer broke, and hiding little surprises under their pillows the night before, just so they'd wake up feeling like the whole world had remembered them. I made themes too, even when they didn't ask. One year, I made an under-the-sea cake with blue frosting and gummy fish. The frosting kept sliding off in the heat, but they didn't care. They squealed and clapped and called it the best cake ever. I remember thinking I'd bottle that sound, the laughter of my children in the kitchen, the sticky kisses, the frosting on their cheeks, and drink from it, whenever I grew old and lonely. I didn't know how true that would become. And then there were the small things, the details no one ever noticed, but me. How I always picked out the candles in their favorite colors, how I saved every card they gave me and reused the backs of them as shopping lists, how I never let anyone feel forgotten, not even their friends. I'd make cupcakes for their classmates, little bags of candy tied with yarn. Some parents rolled their eyes at me too much, they said, overdoing it. But I couldn't help myself. I wanted my kids to feel celebrated, seen, important. I wanted them to have memories so bright they could see them with their eyes closed when they were old. And now I sit in the same kitchen, hands quieter, back stiffer, eyes slower. I still have that old frosting bowl chipped on one side, handle cracked. I used it for years and I still use it now, even though it's just for me. Last week, I found myself baking again, out of habit maybe, or muscle memory. I made a small cake, just one layer, nothing fancy. The kitchen didn't smell the same, or maybe I didn't smell the same. The joy felt different when there was no one rushing in to steal a lick from the spoon. Still, I frosted it. I wrote my name on it, just mine. I didn't light candles. I didn't sing. I just sat there and looked at it. And I remembered all those years, all those mornings where I ran from one end of the house to the other, trying to make everything perfect for them. The years when I spent my last $5 on colored sprinkles instead of bread. The nights I stayed up sewing decorations from scrap fabric. The way I used to sit on the floor and wrap dollar store toys in old newspapers, drawing little stars on the packages to make them feel magical. No one told me back then that the giving would become invisible, that one day all those moments would pile up like dusty boxes in the attic, too full to throw away, too forgotten to open. I don't regret it. That's the strange part. Even now, when I'm the one no one celebrates, I don't regret being the woman who celebrated everyone else, because I saw their joy. And for a little while, it was mine too. There was always one candle I saved, a little red one shaped like a heart. I kept it in the drawer by the stove, tucked inside a small metal tin that once held mints. That candle had been used only once years ago on a night when the power went out during one of their birthdays. We lit it and huddled around the kitchen table, eating cake in the dark, laughing as the wax dripped onto our plates. That night, they said, it was the most magical birthday ever. Afterward, I wiped the wax clean and put the candle away, just in case I'd said. It became a quiet promise to myself. If they ever forgot, I'd still light it. The first year they didn't call, I took it out and placed it in the center of the table. Just the one. No cake, no singing. I didn't light it. I just looked at it. The way you might look at a photo of someone who's still alive but no longer knows your name. The second year I lit it. Not as celebration, as memory. I sat at the table alone, the candle flickering in a room that suddenly felt too big, too quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just watched the flame dance, remembering all the other candles I'd blown out on their behalf, all the years I'd pretended they were too tired to do it themselves. Let mommy help, I used to say. It was easier than admitting that sometimes even children forget their mother's birthdays. And still I kept the tradition alive, a lone light on a forgotten day. This year, I couldn't find the candle. The drawer was too full of other things, old batteries, expired coupons, a crumpled grocery list. I think I threw it out by mistake, or maybe I didn't. Maybe it was just gone the way some things vanish quietly when no one's looking. But I still waited. Not as long, just an hour maybe. Long enough to hope, short enough to pretend I wasn't. And when the silence came, I made tea, poured it into a chipped mug from a long past Mother's Day, the one with fading letters that used to spell "World's Best Mom." I wrapped my hands around the warmth and sat by the window where the light pooled in soft patterns across the floor, the kind of light that makes you feel both held and hollow. I didn't light a candle this time, not because I'd given up, because I didn't want to pretend anymore. For so many years, I had created birthdays out of scraps and silence, holding everyone together with tape and tenderness. But I was tired of holding my own heart like a wrapped gift no one wanted to open. Maybe love shouldn't have to beg to be remembered. Maybe mothers shouldn't need to remind their children that they exist outside of their usefulness. I thought about all the times I waited for them to come home, cooked for them without being asked, stayed up late, sewing costumes, cleaning up cake crumbs, watching their faces light up over things I had quietly orchestrated behind the scenes. All those invisible strings I tied and retied, believing that someday someone would turn around and say, "I see what you did, thank you." That thank you never came. But that doesn't mean the love wasn't real. I've started to think that maybe the candle was never for them. Maybe it was always for me, a way of reminding myself that even if they didn't remember, I did, that I existed, that I gave, that I was here. Maybe that's enough. Maybe not. But tonight I go to bed without the candle, and I carry the light inside me instead. I still have a small box in the top of my closet, frayed edges, corners soft from years of opening and closing. Inside it, there are bits of my old life, the kind of things no one asks about: ribbon scraps from party favors, wrinkled wrapping paper. I carefully folded and reused faded photographs of children with frosting on their noses, birthday cards they made out of construction paper when they still called me Mommy with wide eyes and sticky hands. There's one roll of wrapping paper that's almost translucent now, pale pink with tiny gold stars. I bought it on clearance in 1994, and I've used it for years, taping it gently over boxes of secondhand toys, thrifted sweaters, and handmade scarves. I never wasted a scrap. Each leftover corner was trimmed and saved, tucked away for future birthdays. Not for me, never for me, but for them, because I believe deeply that they deserved beauty, even when we had nothing, especially when we had nothing. They used to laugh at how I saved everything. "Mom, just buy new paper," they'd say, unwrapping gifts with careless fingers tearing the paper I'd folded so delicately. I'd smile and pretend not to mind. But later I'd gather the torn pieces from the floor, smoothing them out with my hands that had given so much too much without ever asking for anything in return. I was the kind of mother who made magic out of nothing, who turned candles and dollar store trinkets into memories, who never wanted her children to feel less than, even if it meant I went without. Birthdays weren't just days to me, they were ceremonies. Proof that someone had been born into love. So imagine now what it feels like to be the only one left remembering. That box in my closet feels heavier each year, not from weight, but from what it holds that no one sees. The effort, the thoughtfulness, the care. All things I gave freely, never imagining a day would come when no one would give them back. The wrapping paper hasn't been touched in years, not since they stopped coming home for birthdays, not since they started saying things like, "We're just doing something small this year," or "We'll catch up next weekend," or worst of all, nothing at all. I remember one year I wrapped my youngest gift in that old starry paper, tied it with a red ribbon, and added a little tag that said, "Always." They didn't even read it. Just tore the paper open, muttered thanks, and moved on. I stood there holding the shredded pieces like they were pieces of myself. I laughed politely. I always laughed. Now I look at that paper and wonder if it's time to throw it out. But I can't. Not yet. It's silly, I know. But that paper is a record, not just of gifts, but of love. Quiet, persistent, invisible love. The kind that isn't celebrated, the kind that wraps and tapes and ties, even when no one notices. Maybe someday I'll wrap something for myself. Maybe I'll take a box, put something small inside a tea bag, a letter, an old earring that lost its pair, and wrap it just for me. Just to remember that I too was born, that I too had birthdays once, that I too deserve to be celebrated. And if I do, I'll use the starry paper, and I'll write, always on the tag, not for them this time. For me. There's a new photo on their living room wall. I noticed it the last time I visited an impromptu Sunday stop squeezed between soccer practice and grocery runs. The frame was sleek modern. Everyone was there, my children, their spouses, their children, even the dog, everyone but me. I stood in front of it longer than I should have. No one noticed. They were busy cutting fruit, opening mail, answering texts, the kind of busy that leaves no room for presents. And so I looked at that photo, studying each smiling face, each coordinated outfit. I imagined the moment the shutter clicked, laughter, the quick adjustment of a shirt, maybe a playful scolding to the little one who always squints. A perfect portrait of a family I built. I didn't ask where it was taken. I didn't ask why I wasn't there. I already knew. It wasn't that I wasn't invited. It was that I hadn't even been thought of. I wasn't forgotten deliberately. I was simply not considered. There's a difference, and somehow that difference cuts deeper. Later, they handed me the baby to hold. I bounced her gently, the way I once bounced them, and I smiled down at her little cheeks, soft as warm dough. She cooed, and I whispered, "Your grandma loves you," even though I wasn't sure she'd grow up hearing that word grandma attached to anything but a phone call or a birthday check. Still, I held her, as if I could anchor something, anything, with my arms. When I returned home that evening, I sat at the kitchen table alone, tea cooling beside me. I thought about that photo again. I tried to remember the last time I'd been in a family picture. Not just a blurry one someone snapped at a holiday meal, but a picture someone had wanted me in, positioned me in, made space for me in. I couldn't remember. It's strange to be the frame around someone else's happiness, invisible, supportive, necessary, and yet missing from the image. I used to make photo albums too, stacks of them, each page carefully crafted with handwritten captions, little stickers, clippings from birthdays and school plays. I used to press their baby hair between pages, save receipts from their favorite childhood meals. I documented their joy like it was sacred, like their memories would fall apart without me holding them together. No one asks to see those albums now. They sit in my closet next to the wrapping paper gathering dust. But I still take them out sometimes, flip through the pages, remember the way they'd crawl into my lap to look at them, ask me to tell the stories again and again. The birthday where the cake fell, the party where it rained, and we danced anyway. Back then, I was the center of every story. Now I'm the narrator no one listens to. I used to believe that if I loved well enough, they'd never let me disappear. But love doesn't guarantee remembrance. It just guarantees the ache when you're left out of the picture. Still, I keep their old photos near, not to remind me of what I lost, but of what I gave. My face may be missing from the new frames, but I was there in every laugh, every toothy grin, every handmade costume and surprise balloon drop. My fingerprints are on their joy, even if my face is not. And maybe that's something to hold on to, even if they don't. Sometimes I still hear their voices tiny and musical, not the grown-up tones they use now. I close my eyes, and it all comes back, the off-key birthday songs they sang to each other. The giggles when someone sang too loud, the way they'd grab my hands and pull me into their little circle of joy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. They used to sing it to me too. not always in tune, not always at the right time. One year they sang it a day early, convinced it was the 15th and not the 16th. I didn't correct them. It didn't matter. What mattered was that they sang, and they meant it. And they looked at me like I was the most important person in the world for at least one song. Those songs don't come anymore. Now their birthdays are posted online with slick photos and matching captions. My world, my heart couldn't do life without you. And I smile at the pictures like a stranger looking in on someone else's celebration. I usually press the little heart button even though it stings. I don't want to seem bitter. I want them to know I see them, still. I remember one birthday maybe 20 years ago when I had the flu. I was shivering, couldn't get out of bed, and still I made it to the kitchen in the early morning to set up the decorations for my youngest. They were turning 7. I taped streamers with trembling hands, blew up balloons until my head spun, and laid out the cake I had managed to bake the night before, between coughing fits and cold compresses. They never knew I was sick. I smiled in all the photos, wrapped in sweaters, my face pale but present. That's what mothers do. We show up, even when we're falling apart inside. And they used to notice, used to care. But something shifted over time, I'm not sure when. Maybe when they got their own homes. Maybe when they became parents themselves. Or maybe it happened slowly, like dust collecting in the corners unnoticed, until one day you realize the air feels heavier and the light doesn't come in quite the same. I started singing birthday songs alone. At first it was a joke, a quiet laugh in the kitchen, me singing to myself as I made my morning tea. Happy birthday to me. I'd murmur, lighting a candle on a leftover muffin, pretending it didn't matter. But this year, the silence was louder. No candle, no song, no even pretend moment of celebration. Just the quiet clink of a spoon against ceramic, the whistle of the kettle, the creak of the chair as I sat and stared at the empty seat across from me. They used to sing with such joy, unself-conscious, pure. Now even their greetings feel rehearsed automatic if they come at all. A forwarded meme, a 2-word text, a shrug of acknowledgement tossed into the abyss of modern noise. I used to think I had done something wrong, that maybe I'd failed them somehow, that maybe my love had been too much or not enough. But the truth, I think, is more ordinary. Life gets busy. People forget. The things they once needed become invisible once they no longer do. I don't blame them, but I do miss the songs. Even a single note would have been enough. Even a hum, even a whisper. But the only thing singing this year was the kettle, and it didn't know the tune. It came late at night, just as I was getting ready for bed, a text from my daughter, if you can call 3 words a text. So busy. No hi mom. No, sorry, I forgot. Not even an accidental emoji. Just that. 2 words and an exclamation mark, as if the energy of punctuation could replace the care of presence. I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, unsure what to reply. It's okay. I understand I miss you. But I said nothing. What do you even say to someone who believes they've said enough with so little? I used to count down to their birthdays weeks in advance, making lists, checking calendars, making sure no detail was missed. And now I was reduced to a 2-word afterthought on the day that marked my own birth. So busy. I wanted to ask, too busy for what? For a call, for a memory, for a moment to say I'm thinking of you. But I didn't. I knew the answer wouldn't satisfy me. It never does. Busyness has become the acceptable excuse for everything now. It covers every forgotten promise, every missed opportunity to show love, like a thin sheet thrown over a pile of dust. I remember being busy too. I remember holding one child on my hip while stirring soup with the other hand, answering the phone wedged between my shoulder and ear, folding laundry with my feet mentally calculating the hours until I could sit down, and yet I always remembered their birthdays. I never once said I was too busy to love them. Love doesn't require hours. It requires intention, and I've learned painfully that intention is what disappears first. That night I didn't reply. I just set the phone down and lay back on my bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I could hear the neighbor's television through the wall, some sitcom laughter drifting faintly into my room like a mockery of joy. My own house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums beneath your skin reminding you that you are alone. I used to think being alone meant no one was there. But it's worse when you know people are there, they just aren't looking your way anymore. The next morning I woke up and checked my phone. Nothing else had come. No follow-up. No, how are you feeling? No, I hope you had a nice day. Just the digital echo of so busy, like a door swinging shut in the wind. I made myself breakfast, toast and 1 egg soft-boiled. I used the blue plate with the small chip in the rim. They used to fight over that plate, as kids said it made food taste better. I never corrected them. Let them believe in magic while they still could. I sat at the table and ate slowly, letting each bite anchor me back to something real. I looked out the window. The sky was soft, overcast, quiet. The kind of sky that understands a woman who celebrates herself in silence. And I said out loud to no one, but the room, the toast, the air, happy birthday. Just those 2 words. And I meant them. Because even if no one else remembered, I did. Even if no one made time, I had. Even if no song was sung, no candles lit, I had shown up for myself. I may not be on their calendars anymore, but I am still here. And that deserves at least a whisper of recognition, even if it's just mine. This year, I didn't make a cake. I bought a single slice from the corner bakery lemon with a sugar glaze that cracked under the fork. It sat in a plastic clamshell container fogged from the cold case. I carried it home in a paper bag, the kind that crinkles in your hand and leaves the faintest scent of sweetness behind. It felt small, hollow, but I told myself it was enough. When I got home, I didn't even bother with a plate. I peeled back the plastic, set the slice down on a napkin, and walked it to the table. I stuck a single candle into the center. It leaned slightly unsure of itself, the wax wobbling against the frosting. I didn't have a match, so I used the stove to light it, cupping the flame like it was something sacred. And then I sat down. No one around me, no voices, no chairs pulled close, no ribbon, no song, no hands clapping in excitement, just me. Me, a slice of lemon cake, and a flame that flickered like it too was trying to decide whether it belonged. I sang quietly. I don't know why. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of defiance. Maybe because I needed to hear someone say the words, even if the voice was mine. Happy birthday to you. I felt my throat catch. Happy birthday to you. My voice wavered, old and soft. Happy birthday, dear, I paused. And then I said my name. It felt strange, like naming a stranger, like hearing something once familiar from far away. I closed my eyes and blew out the candle. For a moment, the smoke curled like a ribbon in the still air. I watched it rise and vanish, and with it went the last sliver of hope that maybe someone had just been late, that maybe the phone would ring, that maybe there was still a surprise waiting. But it didn't come. So I ate the cake. It was dry, too sweet, nothing like the ones I used to make. But I ate it anyway, fork scraping the plastic, the sound echoing slightly in the room. I used to bake with so much care, real butter, fresh zest, measuring with a precision that came not from perfectionism but from love, from wanting each bite to feel like a hug. Now I bought what was easy, what required nothing of me, and even that had to be eaten in silence. I tried not to feel sorry for myself. There's a difference between sadness and self-pity, and I've always been careful not to tip too far into the latter. But it was hard sitting there with a slice of cake meant to fill the hole left by voices that once sang with full hearts. I wanted someone to knock on the door. I wanted flowers. I wanted a card that said, "You matter." But none came, and so I gave it to myself in the quietest way I knew how. That night I took the wrapper from the cake, folded it neatly, and slid it into the same old box where I keep the saved birthday ribbons and cards. It felt silly, pointless even, but it was a record not of being remembered, but of how I remembered myself. The truth is, I didn't want the cake. I wanted to be wanted. And when that didn't come, I gave myself what I could. Not much, but something. A candle, a song, a slice, and a whisper. Happy birthday. I was always the one who remembered. Not just the big things, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, but the small things too. The things that slipped through everyone else's minds like water through fingers. I remembered the names of their childhood friends, the flavor of cake. Each one loved the time they were born down to the minute. I remembered which sweater made them itchy, which movie made them cry, which lullaby worked fastest on stormy nights. I was the keeper of every little detail, their invisible archive, their silent witness. I remembered because it mattered, because they mattered. And in my remembering, I thought foolishly maybe that they would remember me too. But memory isn't always mutual. Sometimes it's a one-way street lined with closed doors and dim lights, and you walk it alone, carrying everyone else's stories while yours go untold. They don't remember the year I made 3 birthday cakes in one weekend because their parties fell so close together. They don't remember how I stayed up mending a costume the night before a school performance because they'd torn it in rehearsal. They don't remember how I counted every coin to buy that bicycle they begged for, and how I smiled like it was nothing, like it hadn't cost me dinners and sleep and quiet tears in the pantry. But I remember. I remember it all. I remember the joy on their faces, the way they flung their arms around me, the sticky kisses, the crayon-drawn cards. I remember being their everything. I remember when they needed me. Now they don't. And I am left holding their memories still warm in my hands, while mine sit forgotten like unmarked graves. There's a loneliness that comes from being the only one who remembers. It's not just being forgotten, it's feeling like you were never fully seen to begin with. Like your love was accepted, used, even cherished, but never really recognized. One time when they were older, I asked if they remembered the little birthday book I used to keep, a small leather notebook with each child's name, and every birthday carefully planned the themes, the gifts, even what they wore. My youngest looked at me and said, "Oh yeah, kind of. I think I remember it," and then went back to their phone. I still have that book. The pages are soft with time. The ink is faded, some entries smudged from tears or kitchen spills, each line a testament, a declaration I cared. I prepared. I thought of you before you thought of yourself. I never expected them to memorize every detail, but I thought they'd remember the feeling of being held in someone's full attention, of mattering deeply and without condition. Now I see how easily people move on from those who held them. And yet, I still remember their birthdays, every year, even now. Sometimes I wonder if that's foolish to keep carrying the torch for people who no longer need its light, But it's not about them not anymore. It's about me, about staying true to the part of me that never stopped loving even in silence. Remembering is how I remain real to myself. So I light a candle, whisper a name, write a line in the old birthday book. And when my own birthday comes and goes unnoticed, I still open the calendar, still mark the day, still sit with the weight of memory. Not because someone else sees me, but because I choose not to disappear. The second year, they forgot one of them called the next day, not with guilt heavy in their voice, just a casual breezy, "Oh no, was it yesterday?" As if a birthday were something you could reschedule like a dentist appointment. I laughed. I made it easy for them. "It's okay," I said. "Don't worry about it." But inside something shifted, a little crack, soft and silent, that widened over time. Was it yesterday? Yes. And the day before, and the weeks leading up to it when I reminded myself not to hope too loudly. I'd planned nothing just in case, but my heart had still waited. I remember standing at the sink when that call came in. I had just finished washing the single plate I'd used for dinner, the dish towel still in my hands. I answered with a forced cheerfulness, trying to make my voice sound fuller than it felt. "Oh no, was it yesterday?" That sentence clanged inside me like a dropped pan in a quiet house. Not because it was cruel, it wasn't. It was ordinary, casual, careless. That's what hurt the most. Not deliberate cruelty, just that I had become forgettable. I made small talk, asked about their kids, their job, their weekend plans. I didn't mention the silence of the previous day, the candle I hadn't lit, the way I had stared out the window, until the sun dipped below the trees and the room turned blue with dusk. They hung up with a cheerful "talk soon," and I stood there in the fading light, dish towel damp, phone screen gone dark. That night I sat in bed and tried to remember the last time someone had asked me what I wanted on my birthday. Not what I needed, not what was convenient, what I truly wanted. I couldn't think of a single time. Maybe that's what birthdays become when you're a mother for long enough. They stop being days about you and start being just another chance to give. Even now when I try to recall what I did for myself last year, or the year before, the memories blur into a fog of trying to make others comfortable, even on my day. But here's the thing I've come to understand slowly, and with a kind of aching grace. People don't always mean to forget you. They just learn that you'll be fine if they do. Because you've always been fine, always strong, always understanding, always the one who says it's okay. And so they come to believe that your needs are optional, that your heart can be paused, postponed, penciled in. I don't think they realize what it means to a mother to be remembered, to be called first instead of last, to be the person someone makes a cake for, even if it's lopsided and late, to be celebrated not for what she gives, but simply for who she is. That second forgotten birthday taught me something I wish I hadn't learned, that when people stop seeing you, it's rarely all at once. It happens gradually, like light fading at dusk. You don't notice until it's gone. And when they say, "Oh no, was it yesterday?" you smile and nod, because the alternative telling them how it felt feels like too much. So you say it was fine, that you had a peaceful day, that you treated yourself, that you're just glad they called. And then you hang up and sit in the quiet, not angry, not broken, just dimmed. But even a dim light is still a light, and I'm learning how to hold mine closer. They say I mothered too much, too attentive, too involved, too selfless, as if those were flaws, as if love when it came without limits turned sour with time. One of them even said, not unkindly, "You were always just there, always doing things. You never let us figure things out on our own. It was meant to be a compliment laced with reflection. But I heard what sat underneath it, that maybe I had loved too loudly, that maybe my care had crowded out their appreciation. I didn't argue. I just smiled and nodded the way I've learned to when the words inside me feel too old to fight. What they don't understand is that I didn't mother hard out of control. I mothered hard because there was no one else, because they needed it, because I needed it too, because I had learned from my own mother's silence, from my own childhood's hollow places, that love had to be visible, that you shouldn't wait for someone to guess they mattered. You had to show them, over and over. So I did. I was the one who remembered the shoes before gym day, the one who packed the extra snack just in case, the one who sat in the car outside late-night practices, engine running, knitting half-heartedly just to keep my fingers from freezing. I wrote notes in their lunchboxes long after they pretended they didn't want them. I kept doing it even when they stopped replying to them. I picked up the slack when they forgot their friend's birthday, and I whispered reminders into their ears about kindness and gratitude and being the one who notices. I thought I was teaching them love, and now I wonder, did I teach them to expect it without returning it? I gave them everything I never had: warmth, presence. I wasn't perfect, but I was there, always there. Every scraped knee, every lost sock, every late night that needed one more story. I thought they'd grow up knowing how to love like that, but maybe I forgot to teach them one thing, that mothers are not made of endless supply, that even the ones who give everything want just once to be given to. Now when they say I mothered too much, I hear the quiet critique that maybe I should have pulled back. Let them fail more. Let them miss things. Let them feel absence. But that wasn't in me. I was made of filling gaps, of being the net, of loving like floodlight, not flashlight. And yes, it has cost me. It has cost me the very thing I thought I was building, the sense that I would be held, remembered, cherished in return. Instead, I became background, expected. Like the turning of the seasons, comforting, constant, and ultimately taken for granted. No one thanks the sunrise. It just is. And now I feel like that light that was always there, so no one thinks to look up anymore. But I'm still light, even in the quiet, even in the forgetting, even when the love I gave is returned only in echoes and late-night texts that say, "So sorry things have been crazy lately." I am still that woman who packed lunches with notes, who stitched love into seams, who stood alone in the kitchen with a cake in her hands and a heart too full of memory to put down. They say I mothered too much. Maybe they're right, but I'd do it all again, because it wasn't too much for me. It was just what love looked like. This year, I said nothing. No subtle reminders, no cheerful texts the week before, no casual hints slipped into conversation. I didn't circle the date on the calendar where they might see it during a visit. I didn't tag a memory on social media. I let the day come like a tide and wash over me in silence. I wanted to truly see if anyone would notice on their own. I woke up before the sun that morning. Old habits die hard. For 30 years, my body trained itself to start early on birthdays. I used to rise with excitement thinking about balloons, surprise breakfasts, little things that made my children's days feel different from every other. I used to believe that if you made someone feel special enough, they would never forget the feeling, or the person who gave it to them. But they did. And so this time I simply let the day unfold. No expectations. That was the promise I made to myself, no hoping, no waiting. Still, I glanced at the phone more than usual. I checked the mailbox. I listened for footsteps up the driveway that never came. It was quiet, not peaceful quiet, but hollow, like a room that once held laughter now echoing with memory. I made myself oatmeal, no sugar, just warm and plain. I ate it slowly while staring out the window at the fence I used to decorate with streamers and string lights. I used to hang signs that said "Happy Birthday" in big letters painted by little hands on cardboard. I could almost see them still fluttering in the breeze like ghosts of a life that felt both close and impossibly far. Midday came, no messages, no calls. I kept myself busy with small things, dusting picture frames, folding laundry, watering the plants. I always forget on ordinary days. But everything felt deliberate, like I was moving through water. I was performing a life so I wouldn't feel the absence of being remembered. By evening, I accepted the truth. They had not forgotten this birthday. They had forgotten me. There is a difference, though. The pain sits in the same place in the chest. I sat down with a notebook and began to write, not a journal, not a letter, just something. A list, maybe, a naming. I wrote down all the birthdays I had planned over the years, all the themes, all the cakes, all the smiles, the treasure hunts, the backyard tents, the movie nights, the candles blown out in a single breath. Page after page after page. It felt like testifying, like speaking aloud in a courtroom where no one else showed up. But I was there. I was always there. And in writing it down, I reminded myself I had not imagined it. My love was not invisible, even if it had become unacknowledged. When I finished, I looked at the date at the top of the page. June 16th. My birthday. And below it, in the smallest handwriting I could manage, I wrote, "Not one call, not even a message, and still I exist." It wasn't meant to be defiant, just true. Sometimes truth is the softest rebellion. Not a scream, just a fact whispered into the dark. They didn't remember, but I did. And I didn't remind them, because this year I needed to know the answer, and I got it. It broke something in me, but it also cleared something out. Like tearing down old decorations you've kept hanging long after the party's over. And in that space, maybe something new can begin. Not with them, but with me. There was a time I was the celebration itself. Not just the one who planned it, I was the moment. The music, the laughter, the glue that held it all together. When my children were small, birthdays meant Mom was going to do something special. They didn't know how it happened. The cake magically appearing, the tablecloth matching the napkins, the candles lit just in time. They just knew it did happen. And somehow I was always at the center of that magic, never asking for applause, only watching their joy like it was payment enough. I remember those early years, their little voices squealing. "Mom, look, Mom, did you see I always saw? I saw everything. Every glance, every worry behind their eyes, every hope tucked into a birthday wish. I saw them even when they didn't know how to look at me. Now I am the woman who wipes the table after the party, the one who gets handed the trash bag when the candles have been blown out and the photos taken. Thanks, Mom, they say, with half a hug, already turning away. Somewhere along the line I faded. I didn't mean to. I didn't even notice it at first. But little by little the center shifted. The questions stopped coming. The planning moved on without me. They text each other about celebrations now. They arrange things in group chats I'm not part of. I find out about them afterward when pictures show up online, and I'm left pressing like on moments I didn't share. The last birthday gathering I was part of, I arrived early as always. I brought extra napkins, candles, a knife for the cake. No one asked me to, I just knew what would be needed. I stood in the kitchen while they chatted in the living room. I waited for someone to notice I was there. Eventually, I made myself useful, setting the table, pouring drinks. When the time came to sing, I stepped back, let them have the spotlight. But no one turned to thank me. No one even noticed the cake was cut perfectly, the plates arranged just so. I became background. And when it was over, I stayed behind to clean up. My hands still knew the rhythm, collecting plates, tying up garbage bags, wiping counters. But my heart felt heavy, not just with being overlooked, but with the realization that I had allowed it, that I had trained everyone to expect me to serve without being seen. And now I eat my own cake in silence. I used to believe deeply that if I loved with all I had, it would return to me. Maybe not in the same way, but in some way. A glance, a hand held, a voice that remembered, a heart that stayed close. Instead, I have become a ghost in their joy, present but not included, known but not seen. And yet I still show up, even when there's no invitation, even when there's no table set for me, because I don't know how not to love. But I'm learning something else now. I'm learning to step out of the kitchen before the plates are cleared, to leave the room before I disappear into it, to stop apologizing for wanting more than duty, to understand that my worth isn't tied to what I do for them, it's in who I am with or without their notice. I was once the queen of birthdays, the woman who wore a paper crown and danced barefoot in the living room because her child asked her to. Now I sit quietly, crown packed away, hands resting on a napkin I folded for myself. But in my silence, I am not small. I am simply done shrinking. This year I gave myself a gift. It wasn't wrapped. There was no ribbon, no fancy bag, just a quiet moment in the late afternoon where I sat with myself fully, deliberately, without waiting for someone else to make me feel worthy of celebration. I didn't go out. I didn't bake. I didn't make a wish. I simply did something I hadn't done in decades. I listened to myself. Not the version of me who's always fine, always smiling, always bending to fit the needs of everyone else. No. I listened to the woman underneath the layers, the one who used to dream, who used to write poems on the backs of receipts and save dried flowers between the pages of books, the woman who used to dance to old records when no one was home, the woman who was once not a mother, not a wife, not a caretaker, but just herself. I lit a candle not for a cake, but for the room, for the air, for me. I sat with that light and let it flicker across my hands, my face, the space that has known so much giving and so little return. And I whispered a small blessing, not out loud, not even in full words, but something like, "You're still here. You still matter." Then I pulled out an old scarf from the back of my closet, deep red soft wool, frayed at the edges. I had bought it years ago, thinking I'd wear it on a special occasion, and then never did. There was always a reason: too busy, too casual, too warm out, too extravagant. But that day I put it on, just for me, just because I was alive. And I walked to the park. No destination. No schedule. I passed families taking photos, couples laughing, children dragging balloons behind them. For a moment, I felt the ache again, that invisible feeling of being surrounded by joy that no longer includes you. But then I realized something. No one looked at me like I didn't belong. No one asked if I was someone's mother or someone's grandmother. I was just a woman in a red scarf walking through the afternoon light. And that in its own small way felt like freedom. I sat on a bench and watched the trees shift in the wind. I noticed how the sunlight pooled in the grass, how the leaves whispered to one another like old friends. And I thought, this is a kind of celebration too. Not the loud kind, not the kind with candles and gifts and phone calls, but the kind that comes when you give yourself what the world forgets to: attention, kindness, presence. And I realized maybe the greatest gift I can give myself now is no longer waiting to be seen, no longer waiting to be remembered, no longer waiting to be called, sung to, or held in someone else's orbit. I can choose to be the center of my own small universe. I can light a candle just to watch it glow. I can wear the scarf just because it's beautiful. I can say happy birthday and mean it to myself, from myself, without shame. And when I walked home, scarf trailing behind me like a ribbon on the wind, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt chosen by me. I remember everything. Not just the birthdays, though those are sharpest in my mind, but the small, steady rhythm of being the one who never forgot. The lunches packed without thanks. The blankets tucked under chins at 3 a.m. when fevers came. The late-night grocery runs for cupcakes because someone remembered they had a classroom party in the morning. I was the one who caught what fell through the cracks. I was the net, the quiet, invisible hands. And I did it gladly. But now, after 3 years of being forgotten, I've begun to ask myself the question I never dared to. What happens to the woman who remembers everyone when no one remembers her? This last birthday answered that for me. Nothing happened. And everything happened. No calls, no messages, no knock at the door. But inside, something shifted. A quiet click, like the final bead on a thread, slipping into place. I sat with the silence long enough to stop fearing it. And in that silence, I found something unexpected: relief. Because when you are no longer waiting to be remembered, you become free to remember yourself. This year, I didn't remind anyone, and when the day ended, I didn't cry. I didn't hope or bargain or wonder if maybe they meant to, but forgot. I didn't look for signs. I didn't whisper their names in the dark. Instead, I drew a hot bath. I lit the good candle, the one I'd been saving for a guest who never came. I poured in lavender oil and let the room fill with steam. I soaked until my fingers pruned, until the ache in my knees softened, until I could no longer tell where the water ended, and I began. And when I stepped out, I stood in the mirror, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, skin warm, and I said aloud, "You're still here." It wasn't a grand proclamation, just a fact. And maybe that's all I've ever needed. To know that I still exist, even without applause, even without a slice of cake, or a phone call at midnight, or a card scribbled with "Love you, Mom." I exist in this body, in this breath, in this moment, where I choose myself. I don't know if they'll remember next year. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But I won't be waiting. Because now I see what all those birthdays taught me, not just theirs, but mine too. That love when real does not disappear. That care when deep may go unnoticed, but it is never wasted. And that the woman I've been, the woman who gave and gave and gave, she is not a ghost. She is still here. Quietly, gently, powerfully, still here. The house is quiet now, not the brittle kind of quiet that stings, but the kind that settles like snow on old rooftops, the kind that gives you room to exhale long and deep without anyone asking why. I sit here in the soft glow of evening, surrounded by the things I once thought I had to give up, to matter, solitude, stillness, space, and I realize I don't need to be remembered to remember who I am. I was a mother, a wife, a giver of light in dim rooms. I was the one who stayed up late, who bent without breaking, who made love out of leftovers and joy out of crumbs. I gave more than I should have, and for a long time I believed that if I kept giving, I'd never be left empty. But now I know giving is not what empties us. Waiting is. waiting to be seen, to be thanked, to be celebrated for all the quiet labor of love that slips by unnoticed. So I've stopped waiting, and something beautiful has begun. I light my own candle now, not in mourning, not in anger, but in reverence. I eat my cake slowly, not because it was bought by someone else, but because I chose it for myself. I wrap my own gifts in leftover ribbon not to prove a point, but to honor the hands that wrapped theirs for 30 years. There is a kind of peace in releasing the need to be central in someone else's story. There is a kind of freedom in realizing I am still whole even when they forget. They forgot my birthday, but I remembered my life, and that is enough.